Oprah.
Her
Exciting
hair
news.
was little.
It's interesting news, I think, from the standpoint of the firm. I will never think of the royal family ever in the same way.
Oh, absolutely.
The firm.
There's a lot to be said for authenticity
Yeah.
and speaking your truth. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, that they're like, no holds barred, this is what it is,
Yeah.
and we're going to tell you.
I'm amazed at the reaction that LGBTQ is having, that it sounds like my story. Completely different, but rejection, family, father, definitely. Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 7 p.m. Monday, March 8th, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we are going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
The world's first live daily queer evening news show. Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight.
Thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is an unedited live LGBTQ evening news show. Whatever happens, you'll see it.
This evening, we bring you the news of and perspective representative, the LGBTQ community, the LGBTQ community from South Florida, America, and across our world.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and tonight we welcome anchor Tony Lima. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Ariana's Center Trans Latina Florida that engages, empowers, and lifts up the trans community as the only direct service and advocacy organization based here in South Florida that is led by a trans Latina openly living with HIV. He's a longtime South Florida LGBTQ activist, advocate, and political operative. And in exciting news, Tony is going to be the anchor of the new partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Ariana's Center for the first live trans talk show in the entire world. Good evening, Tony.
It's exciting news to share for the first time. I also want to take a moment to dedicate today's show to our dear friend, Faye Watt, who is recovering from a very important surgery tonight. We love you. We hope you're watching later, and we can't wait to see you back here in this chair.
And in the spirit of my relationship, Faye, who? No, we love you, Faye, we love you. And everything's gonna be great. Next, let's welcome anchor Jonathan Casanes. He is a board member of Forward Miami, a nonprofit organization working to unite South Florida's diverse community in order to advance progress and unifying diverse South Florida communities through civic engagement, cultural programming, and education in order to prosper. He is also co-host of his own show, Miami Community News Forward Miami, airing Fridays at 4 p.m. Good evening, Jonathan.
Hi.
Really? The big bear does laugh the thunder. Yeah,
That was
whatever.
perfect.
All right. All right, well, tonight we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Monday, March 8th. We begin by querying up breaking Q news. In breaking news, LGBTQ America reacts to the bombshell Oprah interview because it sounds so gay. The LGBTQ world is reacting to last night's bombshell Oprah interview with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but not for obvious reasons. Social media is on fire today in the gay community as the comments by the Prince and the Duchess of Sussex remind the LGBTQ community of their own reactions in trying to come out. In 1995, Princess Diana was interviewed on Life as a Royal that received worldwide attention. It was followed nowhere more closely than in the LGBTQ community. After all, it all sounded and felt as an experience so gay. So when Oprah interviewed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, we could feel a sense of deja vu. We got it. We understood what they were saying, and worse. The big news in the interview is not that the royal family, the firm, or even about racism. It's actually about despair and suicide, which LGBTQ America understands completely. The bombshell interview focuses on Harry's feeling that he was watching what happened to his mother all over again and his fervent desire to change that outcome. That, according to Prince Harry, was not going to be the conclusion. South Florida LGBTQ community is reacting today to major revelations, including racism. Markle is the first person of color in her position to serve the royal role. And much of LGBTQ social media is discussing today that connection to seeing similarities to their own experiences. Harry and Meghan discuss media attacks and family discussion that Markle was straight out of Compton, a racist referral to one of the highest percentage black cities, with black people rather, in America. They also revel and reveal that the palace's concerns about what the skin color would be for baby Archie, even though the majority of the Commonwealth nations are people of color. LGBTQ South Florida is also reacting today to the news of family cutoff, and historically familiar response to LGBTQ people who come out and result in rejection from family, friends, jobs, employers, and more. A rejection because you are gay. The Prince and Markle suggest that they would be cut off from security protection, the children would lose title, and more. Harry suggested his father would not take his calls, and his brother, who he still loves, need to be given space to heal. An emotional but self-possessed Meghan said her suicidal thoughts, quote, "I was ashamed to have to admit it to Harry. I knew that if I didn't say it, I would do it. I just didn't want to be alive anymore," end quote. OPRAH had visible shock to the racism comments, but especially to the stories about suicide. At Queer News Tonight, we have done dozens of stories on the significant percentage of the LGBTQ community that have thought about suicide over LGBTQ acceptance, especially in the trans community. The interview helps propel our plea that if you are having thoughts of suicide, call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline in the United States at 800-273-8255. Talk. There is help available for you.
You know, the first thing that comes to mind is that authenticity is extremely important, and speaking your truth. And I commend both the Prince and Meghan Markle for having really the guts to speak their truth. I also found it really endearing how Meghan said that the Queen herself, who is the head of this institution, was very, very kind to her. She was kind and she was sweet and gave her special gifts. So I think it's really interesting. To me, it seems like it's time to modernize these ancient traditions. It's time for Great Britain to possibly maybe even revisit all of this tradition. Because I think in this moment in time, it's interesting that it took a woman of color coming into the monarchy to break it down a little bit. Because during Diana, I mean, she was the one that was vilified for the most part. She was the one that was wrong. She's the one that didn't really fit in. And we know now that the problem lies with the royals and with the institution as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, do we? Like, I know that we do, but do people believe that? I'm very scared for them. The more you speak your truth, the more in danger you are. And Princess Diana suffered that. And I'm a little nervous as to this conversation, one, because of the race issue, and two, because they're really speaking the truth. Not only that, but they have the crown to deal with, which is fiction, but people are perceiving it as real. And then they have the media who are perceiving it as real, but is actually fiction. So it's like, you don't know what to believe. At the end of the day, their lives are in danger. I don't know. That's just what I feel.
You know, it's interesting to both of your observations. A survey was recently done of the most important stories in the LGBTQ community that were not directly LGBT. And Princess Diana was one of the most important in the last 25 years. And there's a reason. The LGBTQ community identified with Princess Diana, what Princess Diana went through, how she was treated, how she was manipulated, how she was responded to as she spoke her truth and said, I'm trying to stand up for myself, and then ultimately how she was rejected all the way to the conclusion of fleeing that night in Paris that led to her death. When her son says, I'm beginning to watch the exact same thing again, I predict over the coming weeks, the LGBTQ community is absolutely going to fall in love with this story of defense because we identify with it so closely.
Absolutely.
I hope so.
Now it's time to queer up education. BYU LGBTQ plus students take a stand for LGBTQ plus rights in iconic demonstration. A group of students at Brigham Young University iconically lit up the school's famed Y in rainbow colors. The demonstration took place for 1 hour and was done in an effort for LGBTQ plus acceptance and recognition. About 40 LGBTQ plus students from the student organization Color the Campus participated in the lighting. Bradley Talbot, the LGBTQ plus student who organized the demonstration, told Salt Lake Tribune that he wanted to send a message to the school. Quote, we're here and we're part of this institution. We should have a place at the Y, end quote. Sparks of change and acceptance were seen last month after the university removed a long-standing rule that banned all forms of physical intimacy that gave expression to homosexual feelings. But 3 weeks after LGBTQ plus students celebrated the overdue change, school officials took away any semblance of acceptance, stating that same-sex relationships were not compatible with BYU rules and regulations. Talbot said, quote, that day felt like a betrayal for a lot of LGBT students. It was traumatic. So this was a day for us to reclaim that and try to turn it into something positive, end quote. Since the lighting of the Y, BYU has released a statement denouncing the event via their Twitter account. Quote, BYU did not authorize the lighting of the Y tonight. The Y is BYU property and any form of public expression on university property requires prior approval, end quote. Color the Campus took to Twitter to express the reasoning and importance behind the event, stating, quote, this is our symbol of love and unity with BYU. The Cougars are out. We stand with both. It's not black and white, it's rainbow. I choose both. The world is our campus. I invite BYU to choose to be our advocate and not our obstacle. It won't stop us either way. Hate is loud, we are louder, end quote.
Yeah, this is a great story. I mean, it reminds me of when I was younger, you know, pranks. You remember when you used to get like dog excrement and you put it in a bag and then you light it on fire and you put it in front of a homophobic's house and then they try to stomp on it. And then when they stomp on it, you just leave and you say, gay rights, and you run away. This is similar to that. No, maybe not. But this is super important for the students there to take ownership of who they are, be proud, and do these types of you know, pranks, if you will, to make themselves be known. It's really sad that BYU took it back, but I definitely think they're on the right path and they should continue to protest in this manner.
You know, several notes. First off, Jonathan, what do you think about you and I taking a quick trip up to Virginia to Liberty University?
Yes.
We'll bring bags. Wait, maybe not.
It's super easy and it's fun. You get to Vogue on the way out.
Exactly.
Gay rights.
You know, BYU, it's time to move into the 21st century. You made a step forward, don't take 2 steps back. And I'll give you an example. You're no Caltech. BYU, you're no Caltech. At Caltech, when you reshape the Hollywood sign using just sheets, and students have done this through the years, you were celebrated as a hero at Caltech and through the entire California community of your ingenuity and brilliance. That's exactly what could happen here at BYU. Okay, it's a funny joke with important meaning behind it. The entire community of that university should celebrate the ingenuity of these 40 LGBTQ plus students.
And be extremely inclusive, right? They're taking their tuition money. These kids are going to class. You have to be welcoming of all of the students on your campus. Regardless if there's only 40 of them or 40 that decided to be out and loud, they have to be included and protected. Shame on you, BYU.
I'm not kidding. Liberty University this weekend. Anybody in with me?
I'm in.
It's actually a big percentage of LGBTQ students there. All right, next, let's queer up entertainment. Pose is coming to an end. The next season of Pose will be its last. Stephen Canals, executive producer, writer, director, and creator of the award-winning series, confirmed the bittersweet news today. Canals said all good things come to an end. The third and final season debuts May 2nd on FX. On Instagram, Janet Mock, a writer and director on the show, also confirmed the news. I am heartbroken to say goodbye to this show and these characters after 3 seasons, she said. Pose's absence from airwaves will be felt. Critics largely applauded the show for its intersectional inclusivity. It was one of the few LGBTQ+ series to center people of color and trans narratives through its depiction of New York's underground ballroom community in the 80s and 90s. Hollywood titan Ryan Murphy played an important role in bringing the show to air, acting as a director, writer, and executive producer, and Mock, an iconic writer, performer, and trans activist, director, and wrote a number of episodes for the series alongside the former Transparent writer, Our Lady J.
Well, as opposed to focusing on the sadness of the end, I focus on the happiness of the celebration of the show. Pose was groundbreaking. We had never seen anything like this before. It took a titan like Ryan Murphy to bring it to television. I have so many friends that literally can quote almost every line of every moment of Pose. The impact of the show is just beyond calculation for the LGBTQ community.
I think it's a shame. I think they could have explored so many more narratives within the existing storylines. They could have expanded more. It was such an interesting time in our LGBTQ history that I'm sad to see it go so quickly. It's almost like it just started to get really, really great, and you started to get to know these characters and falling in love with them even more, and now it's over. So I'm also interested in seeing how they're going to tie all of this up in one season.
Yeah, I mean, I came from the ballroom scene myself. I grew up in that world. It depicted a very, very interesting side of it, especially because it's in the 80s and 90s. So obviously there was, an AIDS, during the AIDS pandemic. So it was a little bit of a sad storyline. So I don't think it reached a greater audience that it could have. But the great thing about it is now people are conceptualizing these stories and these types of shows a bit better, more progressive, more inclusive. So even though it didn't reach a large audience, I think we're now kind of getting to this world where things are going to be a lot more inclusive.
I'm excited also to invite all of you. The 3 of us are going to go to dinner to Bar Rita tonight after the show. Flockfest hosts a fundraiser, and you really want to come because Jonathan and Tony are going to be battling at Bar Rita.
Let's do it.
Tonight. It's going to be exciting.
We're going to be voguing the house down.
All right.
Down boots.
I'm not kidding. I'm pretty sure that's what they're going to be doing tonight. All right. Well, let's queer up health. Once a month PrEP pill shows promising results. A once a month PrEP pill may be on its way. For a new drug to come to market, it must pass at least 3 different trials before being submitted to the FDA for approval for the use in America. Islatravir, formerly known as MK-8591, is being developed by the pharma company Merck. It has already reached its 2nd stage of trials. Following promising results, it looks likely to go to phase 3 trials, bringing it one step closer to approval. In its phase 2 trial, 250 participants at low risk of HIV were recruited to receive either 6 monthly doses of the drug or a placebo. Those taking the drug were monitored to see how quickly the medicine entered their bodies and how long it would remain potent. The drug study participants were found to have levels of the drug well above the pre-specified PK threshold for HIV-1. Last November, the FDA called a long-acting PrEP injection a breakthrough therapy. Captavagravir has been designed to be administered by a health professional once every 8 weeks. Designating a treatment as a breakthrough means the FDA has been very impressed by trial results and will work with pharmaceutical companies to speed up a therapy going through the approval process.
And kudos to Al for being able to say all those pharma names so fluidly. Yay, Al.
Oh wait, there's a story about media coming. We're going to watch Jonathan closely.
Yeah, thanks for that.
No, I think this is an exciting story because I think part of the reason why there are barriers to PrEP because it's a daily pill and people either forget or find it too taxing to take this pill. So if there is a treatment for prevention that you can do once a month, I say kudos. I personally sit on one of the advisory boards for one of Merck's competitors, Gilead, that started with Truvada, and were the first ones to originate the PrEP drug. And I think this kind of progress is very necessary for all of our communities, not only the cisgender gay male community, but the transgender woman community that's also on PrEP.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll piggyback off of that as well, but I mean, I will add that me, right, I'm a person of ritual, like of habits. I need an everyday thing. So I'm glad that there are options now. Give people choices. The more choices to get on PrEP, the better. Whatever works for you works. For me, I think 1 pill a month is going to be tough. I'll probably, you know, like it's like the morning after pill or something, and like I'll end up, you know, forgetting. Luckily, this gives you some time. Like even though you miss the 30th day or the 31st day, there will be some effectiveness thereafter. But I love that we have options now. The more, the better.
Tony, are you surprised that Jonathan Casanes knows so much about the morning after pill? That surprised you?
I no longer have my menstrual cycle, but
I can't help but think, come on, guys and potentially girls, the regimen of taking the medication is really, really important. So you should remember no matter what. I come from an era of AIDS and HIV where it was a death sentence.
Yeah.
So taking a daily pill is the easiest thing on the planet compared to the alternatives. However, any steps that we take, that pharmaceuticals are able to take to make it easier to prevent HIV transmission, good for them. But come on, we should be doing it anyway.
And like Jonathan says, options are important for our communities. So now we queer up trans rights. White House warns state legislatures that passing anti-trans bills is illegal. Watch this.
John, a number of state legislatures are advancing legislation seen as imposing additional restrictions on transgender youth, including those that would inhibit their ability to participate in sports and access transition-related care. One of such bill is on its way to the governor of Mississippi's desk, if not signed already. Has the president expressed any concern about these bills in the state legislatures?
I would just say that the president's view is maybe not well known, but let me restate it here. I'm not aware of discussions directly with state legislators. If he had those discussions, you would likely know, I should say. But the president believes that trans rights are human rights and that no one should be discriminated on the basis of sex. Not only is this the law of the land, it's his own deeply held view. The anti-discrimination executive order the president signed is focused on children being able to learn without worrying about whether they will be discriminated against. And this means not being denied access to the restroom, the locker room, or school sports. And him signing an executive order sends a pretty clear message to state legislators, to lawmakers about where he stands on this issue and what his position is as president.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, reiterating trans rights are human rights, warned state legislatures today that passing bills targeting transgender youth is against the law. Psaki said, quote, "The president believes that trans rights are human rights and that no one should be discriminated on the basis of sex. Not only is this the law of the land, it's his own deeply held view," end quote. Psaki addressed the issue as many state legislatures are advancing bills that would restrict transgender youth's access to sports and transition-related care. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision last year in Bostock versus Clayton County determined anti-transgender discrimination is a form of sex discrimination, thus illegal in the workforce under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Although the ruling didn't purport to address sports, the logic behind the decision has broad applications to all laws against sex discrimination, including the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. Laws seeking to target transgender youth would seem to flout the Bostock decision as well as the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Psaki also evoked the executive order Biden signed on the first day in office seeking to implement the Bostock decision, making it clear it applies to students in the context of bathrooms, locker rooms, and sports. Also during the briefing, Psaki addressed the Equality Act, legislation to expand the ban on discrimination against LGBTQ people under federal law.
Yeah, I'm glad that this question was asked. I'm glad that it was answered in this manner. I'm super, super excited that we have someone like Biden in office that continues to have these topics come up. moreover, have the trans community brought to the forefront of people's minds. We are lucky to have, outlets like Q News Tonight that continue to push these stories out, because as you'll find out later, not a lot of these outlets are giving you this type of information. So I'm loving it.
You know, that question, first off, in the press room was asked by a reporter of the Washington Blade, the gay newspaper in Washington, D.C. Congratulations to them for doing that. Second, you have just watched the issue for the LGBTQ community until the midterm elections in 22. It is the issue that is going to be discussed over and over again. Federalism versus states' ability to limit rights of LGBTQ people. I'm not even going to broadly say trans people, because they're included in LGBTQ, and we have to start talking that way. It doesn't matter that it is focusing on one segment of our community. It is an attack on our community.
Very true.
And there are currently 108 state initiative laws like this against the LGBTQ community. I love that the president and this press secretary completely makes it clear, wait to your own peril, because it is totally and patently illegal what you're doing on the state level. And we're going to stop it, and eventually the Equality Act is going to stop it, and eventually the Supreme Court is going to stop it. That's what the next 2 years holds.
Drop the mic. It's more fear mongering, the fear mongering that we see all the time. Let's use the most marginalized as what to fear so that we don't pass law that's inclusive of all. Yeah. What I find really refreshing is the fact that we have the press secretary of the White House, like, just being a total badass,
Coherent.
right? I have to say it that way. Being a total badass in defense of the trans community as a whole, with words from the president that back it up. How refreshing is that?
Yeah, and by the way, the former press secretary last night on Fox News called Psaki one of the worst press secretaries in the history of America. No, I don't think so.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to put my glasses on. Even though you can't put reading glasses on, they don't let you read.
Oh, we're going to read you, Jonathan.
All right, let's queer up LGBTQ news. Several major mainstream news outlets receive failing grades for LGBTQ coverage. I was just saying this. LGBTQ media organization GLAAD has, for the first time, issued a media report card evaluating 17 mainstream media publications based on their coverage of LGBTQ people and LGBTQ rights. The first ever rendition namely focuses on the same day reporting from February 25th, which is when the Equality Act passed the U.S. House of Representatives by bipartisan vote. Based on that, most of the 17 received failing grades for, quote, repeated, dangerous, and false anti-trans rhetoric, end quote. GLAAD CEO and President Sarah Kate Ellis said, LGBTQ voices cannot be left out of the coverage of the Equality Act, especially while lawmakers use their platforms to spread inaccurate information about them. We are urging the mainstream press to include LGBTQ people while covering issues important to our lives, and to recognize and call out misinformation, end quote. Of the 17 that were evaluated, GLAAD issued failing grades to 8 publications, substandard grades to 3 publications, passing marks to 5 publications, and a super failing grade to 1. None received an outstanding grade by GLAAD's methodology. GLAAD found that Newsweek was the worst offender among mainstream media. In alphabetical order, the other 8 failing mainstream news sources by GLAAD's determination were Bloomberg, the Golden Globe, CBS News, CNN, Fox News, The Hill, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. Publications in these categories overall were found to have failed to include any quotes from LGBTQ advocates and failed to contextualize need for Equality Act. In slight contrast, even Fox News included a quote from an LGBTQ Congress member, Representative David Cicilline, who sponsored the Equality Act. Their report was contributed to by the Associated Press, which received a passing grade from GLAAD's separately. In addition to the Associated Press, the other passing publications were HuffPost, NPR, Reuters, and the Washington Post. They all included statements from LGBTQ advocates of members of Congress. The publications that fell into the satisfactory needs improvement grading included ABC News, NBC News, and USA Today. GLAAD notes that it is not trying to shame or attack the journalists or publications featured in the report, but rather offer suggestions, best practices, and links to helpful resources alongside the grades.
Well, I'm beginning to tear up that you got through that story.
I sort of got
sort of. You know, it's really interesting. I love that GLAAD's done this. Historic. First time ever that they've evaluated media response. I love the chops of GLAAD for doing this, because GLAAD is saying, wait, things have gone pretty good since January 20th with this new president and the philosophy for the LGBTQ community with the new president. Now we want more, and we want to be satisfied in terms of the way the mainstream media responds and communicates and reports on LGBTQ. So good for you, GLAAD, and good for your call out. And Newsweek and others, and the other 7 that received a failing grade from GLAAD, it's a challenge to do better.
In this 24-hour news cycle that we all sometimes have to suffer through, accountability is extremely important. So I'm extremely happy that GLAAD is doing this, because it makes us all, I think, look at the news media in a little bit of a different way. Right. I was completely shocked that NBC, who I thought to be pretty progressive, and Newsweek and some of the others had such terrible grades. Yeah. So thank you, GLAAD, for doing this and for educating the rest of us on the media that we're consuming.
Yeah, I mean, it just tells you to fact check your sources. Like, a lot of these news outlets are actually left-leaning or left-centered. So it's, you know, or they'll say that they're extremely factual or mostly factual. So it's interesting that they got these types of grades, which only tells you that you need to check multiple sources, because it's not all coming from the same place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is our queer headlines for today, so let's catch up on the LGBTQ news surrounding COVID-19 with our special segment called Quarantine Quickies. Queer News Tonight has been LGBTQ America's most important news source on the pandemic, as we have reported on coronavirus on every single news broadcast since January 6, 2020. Tonight we report on the devastating effect coronavirus continues to have on the American and worldwide LGBTQ community in the total number of cases and deaths. We also provide some hope of a new light at the end of this long tunnel. As of tonight, more than 2,080,000 LGBTQ Americans have contracted COVID-19, with more than 37,600 LGBTQ Americans have died from coronavirus. As of today, however, the light at the end of the tunnel is more than 92,000 doses have been administered in the United States. So let's queer up Quarantine Quickies. And we are going to report tonight the headline from the Wall Street Journal's report showing Russian disinformation campaign is working to undermine confidence of COVID-19 vaccines used in the United States. Coronavirus on we're talking about a new report that is showing that the Russian information services are spreading not only misinformation about the virus, but also regarding international organizations, military conflicts, protests, and other information about COVID-19 and our vaccines in the United States. The State Department said, quote, "These sites all vary in their reach, tone, and audience, but they are all spreading Russian propaganda and disinformation." The State Department's finding of a link between these sites and Russian intelligence is a result of a joint interagency conclusion. Dmitry Peskov, a spokesman for the Kremlin, denied that the country's intelligence services were spearheading the disinformation campaign, saying, quote, "It's nonsense. Russian special services have nothing to do with any criticism against vaccines," end quote. The White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, said Monday that the Biden administration is taking steps to address efforts by Russia to undermine confidence in the vaccines.
This is really alarming. I mean, whether it's the Russians or the conservative Latino media in Miami-Dade County, scaring people about vaccines. Like, this kind of stuff has to absolutely stop. I think it's important, like some local news outlets have started, to have public information campaigns that speak to how important it is to get vaccinated. I think we need to do more of that, and it's our responsibility as citizens and as people that are on social media to perpetuate the truth. We need to get this vaccine in order to eradicate this terrible pandemic.
100%. Can I say hemorrhoid on the show? Russia's like a hemorrhoid that we can't get rid of. Jesus. Adios mio is what we would say in Miami. This is madness. I can't wait for Biden to slap their wrist or put the hand down and finally have them leave us alone. This is crazy. But it is, you're right. It's up to us. We'll do it ourselves. We don't need anyone else's help.
You know, this is probably the first time ever in history, Jonathan and I, we are connecting two interesting words into the same moment. Hemorrhoids and Sputnik. Can I say Sputnik? That's their vaccine. They're going to attack Moderna and Pfizer, which has a 94 and 95% effectiveness rating all over the world in terms of the evaluation of all the studies. Versus the Sputnik that they want to sell around the world that is showing approximately a 50% effectiveness. It's just interesting. Russia.
Go away.
Okay, all right. Well, that's our COVID-19 news for tonight. Next, we report that Happening Out Television Network is passionate about our support for the LGBTQ community. An example is Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. And we are broadcasting from our permanent set here in Sunshine in supporting that partnership. The network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ religious broadcast in the world, with more than 30,000 watching every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and it's totally live. We encourage you to tune in. Our campaign of sponsorship proudly supports Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church. Watch this.
Treasurer on the board of directors at Sunshine Cathedral, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
We'd also like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living here in Fort Lauderdale, for making the set in this amazing queer church campus possible.
Finally, we thank Queer News Tonight's hotel sponsor, Best Western I-95 Fort Lauderdale. This is the closest and best choice to the famous Wilton Drive, and our hosts and guests stay at this LGBTQ ally partner. We encourage you to stay here when visiting South Florida.
Well, next up on Queer News Tonight, we are proud to support our local influencers, personalities, drag queens, and entertainers here in South Florida. And tonight we're happy to feature Pioneer Winter. He is a Miami-based choreographer and dance artist and directs Pioneer Winter Collective, a group of artists, activists, and allies in their own right whose bodies and voices transform their social, political, and cultural landscapes.
Pioneer Winter Collective is a physically integrated dance theater company rooted in social practice and community, queer visibility, and beauty beyond the mainstream. Recognized in Dance Magazine 25 to Watch, it democratizes performance in public spaces, museums, galleries, stage, and film. He has also curated and directed the Screen Dance Miami Festival and serves as assistant teaching professor in the FIU Honors College.
Recently, he has been commissioned by the Adrian Arts Center for the Performing Arts, with his work supported by local, state, and foundation grants and fellowships. His latest project, Birds of Paradise, is set to premiere at the Adrian Arts Center in late 2021. He is the Adrian Arts Center's first artist-in-residence collaboration in over a decade.
To tell us more about his upcoming projects, apparently also at the Adrian Arsh Center, is including the Birds of Paradise. This choreographer and dance artist, we welcome Pioneer Winter to Queer News Tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. It's great to be here.
First off, I've got to ask, how do you get a cool name like Pioneer Winter?
My dad said that it came to him in a dream from God, but like as I got older, I also realized my dad was a pothead. So, it worked out. I didn't have to get a stage name. It's just my birth name.
Yeah, very nice. And actually, my question was, how can I steal your cool name, Pioneer Winter? That was really my question. Tell us a little bit about this collective and what's the philosophy behind it? What is it that you're pursuing?
Well, to my knowledge, we're the only professional dance organization in Florida that focuses on queer people in all of our activities. We have years of ongoing partnerships from previous projects, and those have led to thriving relationships with our audiences. We don't really create any sort of artificial divide between our art making and our community engagement practices. We're unapologetically queer, so we're also committed to racial and gender equity in both our leadership as well as our artistic practices. So as you all were saying before, we are physically integrated, and what that means is that dance can be very elitist. It can be very exclusionary, and for the entire life of the collective, we've been physically integrated. So there are dancers that might happen to use wheelchairs. There are dancers that are over the age of 60. There are all shapes and sizes of bodies. And I think that that's really important because the work we make is about real issues and about real people. So it's really important that those real people are represented on stage.
Pioneer, this week we celebrate kind of a grim anniversary. It's 1 year this week of the lockdown. I remember Arts Center and Broward Performing Arts Center going, okay, well, we're going through this, but we're continuing on with our programs and we'll make some modifications, but everything will be fine and we'll continue on until reality set in and everything came to a crashing stop. In performing arts. This new project that you're doing, Birds of Paradise, I pretty much imagine was a project that was designed pre-pandemic and now on the horizon we can see a return. Is that correct?
It was designed pre-pandemic as a live dance concert for an ensemble of 11. But now we've pivoted so that it's actually 95% film and video installation with some live components because I wanted it to be like pandemic proof so that someone can enjoy it just as much from their own home as they would from seeing it in person. Also, I'm now working one-on-one with the performers. So rather than creating a piece that's about being together, this is a lot more about the transformation, the resilience, the rebirth that has happened through COVID because of isolation. So now there are going to be 8 solos created, and those 8 solos will be filmed. And really, it's not like we're documenting a live performance. We actually are treating this work as if it's a film project now.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. So it's just it's par for the course with the arts field. We have to be flexible, and you have to find a way to continue creating. Although a lot of artists have taken the time now to rest, which is also very valid.
Yeah. We remind all of our listeners that if you want live performance to come back in some form of normalcy, follow the CDC guidelines and get your vaccine at your first opportunity. Be vaccinated. I'm curious, Pioneer, the stereotype. I've seen many live performance of dance, and the stereotype I think among many is that it is very, especially in male role, very dominated by the LGBT community, gay men. Is that true? Dance in general, industry-wide in America, is very dominated by gay men. Is that true?
I mean, there are certainly a lot of queer identifying individuals that are dance artists, but unfortunately, historically, those folks have not been able to be themselves on stage. So yes, you might be a gay man in a ballet, but if you're in a ballet company, the director will say, like, you have to dance like a man. All the roles are very heteronormative, male and female partnering. So it's, it really doesn't leave a lot of room for individuals of trans experience, for non-binary folks, for just anyone that wants to be themselves on stage. So that's like the priority of the collective, is that you aren't anything other than yourself.
Pioneer, it leads me to really what I was pursuing, because I love at Queer News Tonight that we give these opportunities to explore the LGBTQ community beyond our bar, beyond our pride parade, and this is an opportunity to explore that. I wondered why it was so important for you to identify the LGBTQ community in the discussion of the Pioneer Winter Collective. So your point is it actually opens the community to more freedom and expression to be themselves.
Yes. And the collective is like 95% queer identifying. So it's just the way we center all of our practices.
It's fascinating. I've done a lot in entertainment, and I've never heard of a company or a creative process that principally identifies as LGBT, because it was a natural assumption, well, we're all LGBT anyway, but you've provided an interesting new perspective. How do people interested in you and the collective itself, how do they get in touch with you?
They can visit our Instagram at Pioneer Winter, or they can go to our website at pioneerwinter.com. Also, we have a landing page on the Adrienne Arsh Center's website. So if you go to arshcenter.org and you look up in their education community engagement section, you'll see that we have a landing page for Birds of Paradise. And we're actually accepting stories from any individuals that want to share their experience with transformation, resilience, rebirth, especially during the pandemic. So that's also an opportunity for engagement with us.
Excellent. And Birds of Paradise anticipated launch is going to be when?
September of 2021. And then once that premieres, already have the next project in mind called DJ Apollo, which I'm really excited about. So it's finally feeling like there's some momentum again, and finally feeling creative after, there being just like such a period of just like felt so gray, Yeah,
some color in all of our LGBTQ life. Well, Pioneer Winter and the Pioneer Winter Collective, fascinating. And we thank you very much for bringing it to our collective attention. And we're very happy that you're with us tonight at Queer News Tonight.
Thanks, Al.
All right. Well, we're going to end tonight's broadcast with the big finish. These are today's silly or news that entertains the LGBTQ community. And with the guy on my left and the guy on my right, I'm sure it's going to be entertaining. Or I'll tell them it's not. So let's discuss those headlines, shall we? All right. First up, in the big finish. This is a strange story. Photos appeared over the weekend showing a giant ship hovering over the water off the English coast. Now, you're not going to believe this, so I'm going to show you. Watch this.
Luckily, I know this picture.
Well, I can't tell if I'm being heard or not, but this video basically is an optical illusion because of a combination of water and light clouds on the horizon create a little bit of a temperature inversion. So where it is floating, the water looks different than the water in the lower level. So anyway, that's, what do you think, Tony?
I'm just like, what? What did you just say?
Show the picture one more time. That's exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it looks like Photoshop.
It
looks photoshopped. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a combination. It was a live video.
It's atmospheric.
On BBC. And it's a combination of clouds and different color water farther away than it was closer.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is cool. I would have been like, it's aliens. Oh my God.
Yeah. See, I immediately buy into it because I love the X-Files.
Yeah, me
Period.
too.
All done. All right. In the big finish, Elon Musk has lost $27 billion. Oh, by the way, that was just last week. How's your portfolio doing, Tony?
Listen, Al.
It's diversified.
If I had a portfolio that allowed for this much money, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, but didn't he like gain it back already, or is he still losing? What's the deal with his portfolio now?
He's
like,
easy come, easy go.
I know. It's like a $20 bill.
When in like 1904, when Monopoly, the game, was created, who would have ever thought that the moniker character was going to be Elon Musk? And who cares if you lose $27 billion? It's a real life Monopoly game. Who cares?
It really is.
It's very strange. In the big finish, this is an interesting story. The founder of Twitter is selling a digital version of the first ever tweet on Twitter. And the current bid is $2.5 million. It's kind of like Bitcoin for a digital
Is
tweet.
it? Is that how they're using it? Because I'm like, Twitter may go away. It's like buying something for MySpace. Like, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me right now.
Right. And what do you do with it? You buy it and you put it on a wall? Like, I'm
You leave it in your
feeling the
email, your
story
unread
whatsoever.
email.
You know, I'm a little confused why y'all would reject this, because every Friday and Saturday night you're buying guys drinks on the possibility of something that's unquantifiable.
Wow.
So,
I see where you're going there.
Al loves to call us
with
out.
that
At least
shade,
that gets a payout.
Yeah, seriously, you get something for that purchase at least. Yes.
or not.
Or not.
Or
Well,
not. All right.
like
That's
well, either way.
that's the big finish. And
And that's today's news for the LGBTQ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing, ring the bell for updates, share this news. We're the only LGBTQ television live video news in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of anchor Tony Lima and Jonathan Casanas, we will see you daily. And by the way, again tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Good night.